Mic check. We'll be starting in 8 minutes. Hi guys, we'll be starting in 5 minutes. If you have friends who haven't logged in yet, please do ask them to do so. We start in just one more minute. All right, guys, let's get started. Welcome. I'm Kashipur to the session today, hosted by MentorPad. Sorry for the delay. There were some random tech issues that we were having, but welcome. Good evening. Let's have a good time together for the next 1 hour. What we'll be doing is we'll be going through what's important for your interview preparation from a summer's point of view. We will go through what recruiters look at from a hiring point of view, from an interview or a GD point of view. We will go through the kind of industries that typically hire at IIMs, the kind of roles they hire for, the companies that you will be interviewing for, the kinds of roles they have, and what are specific interview questions that you will face at those specific companies. That's what we'll cover. Besides that, we will also work with HR questions, which are the more trickier kind of questions that we often deal with. The generic, broader questions like, okay, tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What's a good approach to tackling those? How do you do well there? How do you leverage them to do well in an interview? So that's the focus for today. The way it will work is that this is basically a webinar, so I'll be speaking through the slides. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments box and we will take them towards the end of the webinar. Let's start. So quick introduction to MentorPad. So we are basically a team of IMA, IIT Bombay and IIT Delhi alumni. What we realized that was that throughout our careers, throughout our education, there were many points in time where we think we could have done things a bit better, wherein we could have made better choices, made better decisions, had we had better advice, better mentorship. So that's what we're trying to change here. We're trying to make a difference to the people who are still in college, still in universities, still in the early stages of their careers, and trying to see if we can get them more relevant insights into the industries they're looking into, more relevant advice which will help them take the right decisions. So that's what the attempt is. It's a small attempt on our side to make a difference to the people of this country. That's what we do. We have a board of mentors, which includes consultant, bankers, traders, entrepreneurs, lawyers. We have CAT 100 percentiles. We have people from Harvard, Stanford, and Columbia, lots of IIM graduates, and even a surgeon. So that's who we are, and that's what we do. Let's start with the session now. Let's look at the basics. Firstly, what is it that a recruiter at an IIM looks for? Now, I'm sure a lot of you come from an undergraduate college, which was probably, say, engineering or sciences or law or commerce or art. Now, in all of these things, you have a very specific curricula. You have a very specific set of things which you need to know. It could be certain theories that you need to know, maybe equations if you're in science or engineering. Maybe it was certain history that you need to know. But there's a very specific content, very specific set of knowledge that you are expected to understand and know by the time you graduate. And that is what you are generally interviewed on when you are on undergraduate campus. Things change a bit from a B school point of view. A B school is more about telling you how a business works and how you take business decisions. The most of the curricula of any B school is geared towards designing, helping you how to think as a manager, as a leader. So if you look at it, you might be doing a lot of case studies these days. What they do is they put you on top of that organization or that company and ask you to take a decision from that standpoint. So the difference is that there's no real technical base that you have in an MBA education. It's much more broad based. It's much more wholesome. So based on that, that's what your interviews will be based on. So a couple of things which interviews here look for. First, they want to know you as an individual. Now, remember that if you go as an MBA, you're going into a leadership kind of position, you're going into a managerial kind of position. So they want to know who you are as an individual. Will you be able to deal with senior people? Will you be able to lead a team of people? How will you interact? How will you deal with others? That's what they're trying to understand. So the first thing to know is they'll try to understand who you are as an individual. What are you? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are you proud of? Those are things that if they want to understand from you first and foremost. The second is your understanding of the industry and company you're getting into. Now, unlike undergraduate colleges, wherein you would end up in a company, and probably the mutual expectation would be that you're there for 1 to 3 years, and then you'll probably move, or you'll probably move on to do an MBA or an MS or a PhD or something like that. From a B school point of view, the expectation is that you're there for a longer time. And the expectation, hence, is that you know the industry better because you've been in a B school environment and you know the company you're getting into better. So they do expect a broader awareness of your understanding of the industry you're getting into, your company you're getting into, and a good understanding of the role you're getting into specifically. So that's very important for you to have at this point of your career. The third thing is the right thought process and knowledge. So like I said, a lot of B school education is simply about refining your thought process, to be allowing you to think in a different way, to look at a business in a different manner. That's what a MBA education broadly does. So having that is very important, and we'll come to more specifics about that later on in this presentation. The second is the basic knowledge in place. So there are specific areas, especially like finance and operations, which are more technical. And if you want to specialize there, if you want to make a career there, then you need to know the basic knowledge, basic ideas there. For example, it could be the accounting or a balance sheet in as far as finance goes. It could be, the assembly line calculations and operations. So these are the three main things that a recruiter looks for at a candidate at an IIM, at any B school actually, and that is what you should be clear about and know well about yourself. Now, the first thing there was, okay, know about yourself, right? As in, how do you build a storyline about yourself? The interview will ask you questions which are something like, okay, tell me something about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How do you plan to improve yourself? What motivates you? So those are the kind of questions which are generally tricky to answer, and they're tricky because it's easy to come up with cliched answers to them, which might not always be very good. So what's important is that you set some time apart, understand who you yourself are as a person, go through a bit of your history, take out some good incidents, take out some good anecdotes, and build a story of yourself, which then you can narrate to interviewers. Now, I understand that was very broad. Let's look at it more specifically. So there are three things which it would really help you to spend some time thinking about and noting down. First is your identity. Just remind yourself what your identity is. Who are you as an individual? What do your parents do? Which city do you come from? Where did you study? Where did you work if you have worked before? Is there anything special about you? Have you been an army kid who has moved around cities? Or are you a person with a lot of siblings who have been there with you the entire most of your life? Or have you lived in a joint family maybe? Remind yourself of those things because they do play a role in your identity and defining who you are as an individual. Just note these things down for yourself somewhere on a piece of paper. The second is challenges. This isn't easy to do because we don't really want to remember what our toughest moments have been, but this is important. Go back in your life and pick out the difficult times that you've faced. What are the challenges? What are the difficulties? It could be anything. It could be failing at a course. It could be not getting a job that you wanted. It could be not getting into the institute that you wanted. It could be having financial troubles. It could be having family troubles. It could be a number of things, right? It could be a number of private things, a number of things which you would have shared with people, anything. Note those things down for yourself. Remind yourself what has been tough for you and what has been difficult for you. The third thing which we would recommend you note down is your passions. Now, this isn't as easy as it might sound. You need to think a bit deeper. So your first level passions might be say music or watching movies or playing a sport, right? But then you need to go a bit deeper. Do you like helping out people? Is that something you enjoy? Do you like writing, for example? Do you like writing? Do you have a blog of your own, something like that? Or maybe it's something very different. Does competing give you a sense of satisfaction? right? So you need to go back and think about yourself a bit and see what you really enjoy and note those things down. Now, once you have this identity, challenges, and passions, once you have a set of these written down, that will really help you answer the trickier HR kind of questions, which are the broader generic questions. Let's look at some specific questions now. Now, these are questions which have either been asked in interviews and which are very generic questions which can be asked in an interview, or they have been picked from the questionnaires which a lot of general management firms have on campus. So, a lot of firms, when they come on campus, they might give you a questionnaire to fill out, which has like 8, 10 questions like this, and you need to write them in your own handwriting and submit it. So, some of the questions are from them, some are proper regular interview questions. Let's go through these and see how you would have answered this with the last slide. So let's say someone asks you to describe yourself, okay, what are your transition points and what's influenced your personal development? Now, if you think about this, the first step is obviously your persona, right? It's about who you are as an individual and those kinds of things. That's one thing. But if you think about it, the things that really influence you as a person are your challenges and passions. So what you need to do in such a kind of question is bring out interesting anecdotes and examples from what you noted down there. It could be from anything. It could be from an identity, for example, and it could be things which would interest the interviewer. So, for example, if I just take the same case that okay, maybe you're an army kid and you have been in different places, then what you should say is that okay, I come from this background, and because I was my dad was in the army, I got to travel. I got to meet different kinds of people. I learned to socialize. I learned to get along really well with other people. I really learned a big, strong skill of networking while I was a kid, right? So that's one thing. The second is look at your challenges and look at your passions. So let's say you're passionate about music, right? Did you do something about it? Did you encourage a friend of yours to take it up? Did you start a club or which dealt with music in your undergraduate college? Look at those things. Maybe you had financial trouble when you were in college, right? Maybe your family had financial trouble and you couldn't really support yourself. You found some kind of part-time job and got your stuff done that way. So pick out those things, tell about them, and tell how you grew as a person with them. What happens is two things. Firstly, when you give specific examples, it helps the person understand you better as a person, and it does not and you do not focus on cliched answers which are very common and which really don't affect anyone, right? So by giving specific examples, specific anecdotes, you are much more believable, you are much more credible, and your anecdotes really interest the interviewer, and there's a good chance they will carry forward your storyline from that. So that's what you should do. Look at the bigger picture. Look at what's been your biggest challenges, biggest troubles, or what are your biggest passions are, and try to talk about those in such a broad question. Remember that in an interview is a two-way conversation. So what you say will lead to the next question. If you focus on something that you like, if you focus on say cricket or music or something like that, if you start speaking about it, there's a good chance that the interviewer might actually pick it up for the next question. So such a question, a broad question about who you are as an individual, what you like, what your passions are, what has influenced your personal development, are very good opportunities to steer an interview in your direction. And the best way to do it is to focus on anecdotes from your challenges, from your passions, which you'll be able to answer well and which will be unique to you. Let's look at the next question. What do you think are your major strengths? Again, you can look at your strengths and you can look at your passions and the challenges you have looked at. Let's say you had difficulty getting a good job while on undergraduate campus, right? Maybe it took you like 30, 35 interviews to get there. Now, what do you learn from that? That was a challenge for you. It was a stressful time for you. But did you learn something from it? Did you probably learn to take the help of your friends and peers who had done a good job and take advice from them? Did you learn to probably better research what you're getting into so you have a better understanding? Did you learn to practice your communication because you realized you weren't a very good speaker and couldn't do well in interviews? A number of things, right? A challenge is a way to present a weakness of yours plus how you fixed it plus how you're a better person now, and that makes it a strength. So that's how you need to look at these things, and that's how you need to present these things. Look at what your challenges have been. This could be an example of a challenge, or you could simply take up a passion. You could say that, okay, I was really interested in music. I had never picked up a guitar in my life, but really wanted to do it. And I took out my time from a busy sixth semester, in spite of my interviews on campus. And I took out the time. I found an instructor. I devoted my time. I devoted 3 4 months to it, and then I finally won a competition at the end of it. And my strength there is that I'm good at getting things done. I can set a goal for myself. I can take out the time I need for myself, and I can achieve it. I have that confidence with myself. Now, a lot of you might not have looked at, learning the guitar as an achievement, as a strength, but that's how you can present it. Anything that you have done, you have achieved, or a struggle you have gone through, or a difficulty you have faced, can be presented as a credible strength, can be presented as something which speaks about you very highly. So look at it that way. Let's look at a couple of more questions. Let's say they ask you 3 personal improvement areas. Now, really, this is a question which is quite broad and which can be put in different ways. Probably the easiest way is to just look at the challenges you have had. You could say that, okay, I fell in. Let's just take the same example. Let's say you had difficulty getting into a good company. Right now, because of your challenge, because of the way you dealt with it, you're actually coming up with an improvement area. You could talk about an achievement, that yes, I cleared this entrance exam by doing this and that, but I realized that even after getting a good score, that I could have done things better by devoting more time to this and doing things this way. And what they're trying to understand here is your ability to self-reflect on who you are and how you do things. So if you're able to come up with good examples, good specific examples of where you could not do a thing well because of a weakness of yours, but then you took corrective action and did it better the next time, that is the kind of story that you need to put in here. Because that shows that you are credible, that yes, there are things which you have gone through which have been difficult, and you have been mature enough and you have been reflective enough to actually correct those. So that is the way you need to present this kind of a question. Why do you think these are improvement areas? Talk about what your ambitions are, talk about what you want to do, and talk about how those improvement areas led to challenges, led to making things difficult for you, and why they're important to you. That's all about it from an improvement area point of view. Your most significant professional academic achievements. So again, it would be very easy to come up with a cliched answer that I cracked CAT, or I got a good job in this IT company, or I managed to get into this college, this educational institute. That's not what you want to do here, because they are not memorable answers. They are not something which the interviewer will take away, or that will lead to a new question. So you need to be a bit more creative. Look back, think what is really important to you. Let me give an example. Let's say you were in the third semester of your undergraduate college, right? And you weren't doing well in a course. You were about to fail that. But you were able to really pick yourself up in the last month. You spoke to your faculty members, you spoke to your TAs, you worked with your friends. You really put in a significant amount of time and actually cleared that course. Now, this would not be a regular achievement, right? This would not be a normal, what you would call a professional or academic achievement. Yet it's a very interesting story to have in an interview, because it says a couple of things about you. It says that, okay, you are not hiding what your weaknesses are. Your weakness was that you didn't really do well in a course, but then you recognized it, and then you worked hard towards resolving it. So what might not be a big CV kind of achievement, which you would put on a CV or a LinkedIn, but something which matters to you and something which shows a good side of you. Okay, so that's how you really need to look at this. Another example, let's say at work you were able to uh, deal with a team of people who were not getting to a consensus to a problem, but you were able to do things in a different way. You were able to lead them, you were able to propose a different solution and get them to work something, get them to really achieve what the team needed to. Even that's an achievement. That might not show up on your CV or your LinkedIn page or whatever, but that's a subjective thing, and that's something which can be spoken about in an interview, and it's something which will help build your case in that interview. So be a bit creative, Be a bit insightful and come up with examples which really speak about yourself in a different manner. So just remember one thing, all these kinds of questions, broadly what you need to keep in mind is come up with anecdotes, come up with examples, come up with real life instances, and tell the entire story behind it. How were things before that? What was the incident? What was the example? What happened after that? And what did you learn because of that? As long as you try to get this in place in most of the questions, you'll do a very good job. The interview will be interested. Firstly, you will set new talking points for yourself. Third, it will build credibility for you because you're not talking cliched words, you're not giving cliched examples, you're giving specific examples to you. Okay, so hope that helps. That's broadly about how to deal with the HR questions, which are the most generic and broader questions. So that's about that. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, please put them on the chat bar and we will take them up towards the end of the session. Let's look at specific industries now. So what we'll do is we'll go through what the companies typically hiring are, what are the kind of roles that they have. We'll go through the expectations that these companies have from an interviewee. We'll go through the interview process. I'll go through the myths that are typically prevalent in these kinds of interviews. Let's start with marketing, one of the oldest professions and a role which a lot of B school students happen to go into. So fundamentally, what is marketing? What is that role for? It's the role which generates the top line of the firm. It's the role which generates the revenue of the firm. That's fundamentally what marketing is for. Their function is to maximize the revenues, maximize the top line. Broadly, marketing is broken into two components. There's a sales and there's a marketing component. Now, marketing is the more broader, more analytical kind of role. So it's about understanding what the consumer perception is, understanding how you're building a brand and doing the data analytics, those kinds of things. You have sales, which is the more on the ground kind of roles. We're not actually dealing with distributors, talking to customers, seeing how your product is being placed on shelves. Those kinds of things are what sales is generally about. From a hiring point of view, especially at the IIMs, the way it works is that firms tend to hire you into a sales and marketing program. What they will do is that the first couple of months or a quarter or so, they'll put you in a sales role. They'll take you to a small remote location of India, have you live there, have you deal with the distributors, the sellers, the buyers there, and see how things happen on the ground. And then generally, gradually, you tend to move into a marketing role, which is a more senior kind of role, but where you really need the sales kind of experience. So that's how most marketing programs are designed. They're designed as a combination of sales and marketing, where you tend to normally progress from sales and sales towards marketing. From an expectations point of view, so firstly, they do expect you to have a basic understanding of what the frameworks are and how do you think about marketing in general. That's something which you need to definitely have if you want to go for a marketing firm. It's important to have awareness of marketing initiatives that these firms have been doing. So let's say you're interviewing for ITC or PNG. You should know what the main products are, what they're marketing, what's new in the line of products, what advertisements are they doing, who are they targeting, which areas are they targeting. Those are things which you will have to have a basic awareness of and an opinion on. Uh, a couple of more things, they expect you to have an understanding of what's happening in other sectors. So you cannot just be focused on, say, the FMCG sector. Even ideas from the airline industry might be relevant to your industry here. So be a bit open, talk about what's happening in other industries and other companies, and they'll be happy to have that discussion there. HR questions do generally form a part of the marketing interviews. So all the tricky questions that we looked at right now, your strengths, your weaknesses, etc., might definitely come in there. How does the selection process normally work? So typically there's a CV shortlist followed by a GD. So a GD is quite important in marketing companies, and then a couple of rounds of interviews. Typically, one round tends to be with an HR person, and you have one round which is proper core marketing and less of HR with generally a senior guy. A couple of myths here that are really important. First is that people think you need to put as much jargon as you can, put in all the keywords, put in all the buzzwords that you hear in marketing that you will read in Kotler. Not at all true. Marketing is a very analytical field. It's something which happens, which you need to think about and solve and propose in a structured manner. What frameworks do, what concepts do, which you will read up in a book like Kotler, is introduce you to them, and they give you a framework, they give you a structure to think about a problem and look at it exhaustively so that you don't miss out on things. That's what the objective of framework is, but it does not mean that they expect you to take it by name and actually draw it out on a piece of paper and solve a problem with that. So when faced with a marketing interview, keep these frameworks at the back of your mind, apply them, think them through, but don't really just spit them out as they are. Use them to structure your solutions, use them to come up with better answers and better solutions, but avoid putting random jargon, avoid using just buzzwords for the sake of it. What you say should make sense, should be reasonable, and should be exhaustive. That is your priority, rather than trying to put across as many buzzwords or jargon as possible. Do not come under the impression that they're looking for buzzwords. No, they're looking for how you think, your understanding of the concepts of marketing. That is what is important. Again, give general gyan and talk a lot. No, that is not what marketing is. Understand it for what it is, appreciate it for what it is, and prepare accordingly. Your answers can be about the competitors. Your answers can be about different industries, different companies. It shows you have a breadth of thinking, and then you're aware of what's happening around the world. That's quite important. Do not always believe that you need to praise the existing campaigns. You can take a different opinion as long as you have your own reasoning to defend it. They are looking for people who can think and have opinions rather than people who are just going to come and do operational work, right? So look at it that way. Let's look at finance now. So finance is actually a very wide area. It's not really good to just categorize into one specific area called finance. You need to break it down into what it is about. So a couple of roles there. You have roles which deal with financial markets, which is the sales and trading of equity, bonds, currencies, credit, interest rate swaps, all those kinds of instruments. That's what the financial markets is. You have investment banking advisory, which is basically mergers and acquisitions, bond issuance, equity issuance, IPOs, those kinds of jobs. And then you have corporate finance. Corporate finance is that role of a normal conglomerate or a company which deals with the accounting, which deals with the performance management, the income statements, those kinds of things. Who does this? So firstly, you have the investment banks. You have banks like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, UBS, Nomura. They tend to have both an investment banking division, which deals with M&A, which deals with bond issuance, those kinds of activities. And then they have a sales and trading division, which deals with, well, sales and trading of bonds, equities, those kinds of things. You have hedge funds. So hedge funds are typically institutions which deal with larger amounts of capital, and they do what's called proprietary trading. So they're trading purely for profit. They're trading pure at a higher risk and higher reward ratio. So they deal with strategies. They deal with the instruments that might not be available to you as an individual user, but they're available when the notional size is larger, and they take higher risk in order to generate higher returns. So that's what hedge funds normally do. You have private equity and venture capital. So private equity is basically a set of firms that will come up, that will invest in generally medium stage firms which are, you could say, unhealthy, which are trying to expand or which are not doing well, or which badly need an infusion of capital. So they'll try and come and buy equity when it's cheap. They will bring people onto the board of that company, and they'll try to turn it around in the next 1 to 3 years by putting in money, by getting experts, by getting them the right advice, and then they'll try to get it to a higher valuation in the next couple of years, and then they'll try to sell it off. That's what private equity firms normally do. Venture capital is the investment into smaller firms, the early stage startups, This is more on the higher risk, higher reward kind of ratio. Generally, the way they look at it is that they'll invest in 20 companies. Even if one of them blows up, becomes a Flipkart or an Amazon, it's a 100x, 200x return for them. That's how VCs generally function. Corporate finance, nearly every single corporate will have a corporate finance function. There's no way you can really work without that. What are the expectations here? So first, like I said, finance is a very broad area. And what you need to do first of all, if you're going into finance, is that you need to boil down the area which you want to go into. So preparing for financial markets versus preparing for merger and acquisitions kind of job or a private equity job are very, very different. So you need to be specific in what you're going for and prepare accordingly. If you're going for markets, you need to prepare on your technical understanding of what a bond is, what equity is, what an interest rate swap is, what an option is, how do you price an option, those kinds of things. If you want to go into accounting, into investment banking, then you need to read upon industries and you need to understand basic accounting principles. What's a balance sheet? What's an income statement? What happens when there's an M&A activity? What happens when new debt is issued? When new equity is issued? That is what you need to understand. So they're fairly different areas. There's very little overlap between the two, and they require different preparation. So just keep that in mind. Macroeconomic awareness is important. Understanding what's happening in the world from a monetary policy and a fiscal policy point of view, which means that knowing what's happening in India, what is the RBI doing, what's happening in Europe because of the Brexit event, how are the US elections affecting the markets, what is the US rate hike cycle looking like. A couple of you might be aware that rates are now negative in Japan and Europe. What's your opinion on that? How do you think negative interest rates make sense? So having that broad understanding of where FX is in the world, where interest rates are in the world, how economies are doing, how economies like China, India, US are doing, that is really important from a finance point of view, irrespective of whether you're going to financial markets or investment banking or wherever, right? Understanding of the industry is important. So finance is an industry which tends to go in cycles. There are good cycles, there are bad cycles. So understand where things stand, how firms are doing right now, who are the major competitors, who are doing best, who are doing worst. That awareness is important to have. From an interview point of view, so typically there are no GDs in finance companies. It's more of a CV shortlist and followed by interviews. From a knowledge testing point of view, like I said, your technical knowledge is important, and based upon what you are actually going into, the role you're getting into, and obviously understanding basic macroeconomics, basic level of basic understanding of the industry is important. A couple of myths. You do not need to know everything about accounting to get a finance job. Like I just said, it's more specific to what your role you're getting into. If you want to be trading bonds, then you have absolutely nothing to do with accounting at all. Do not be under the impression that only people with a technical background get into financial markets. That is not the case. I've seen a lot of people with commerce, science background do very well in these kinds of roles. One thing to add here, two things to add here actually. First is just a reminder that if you have any questions, put them on the chat box and we'll answer them. Those of you who put in questions in the form, we already have them and we'll take them up at the end. The second thing is that if you want to deep dive a bit more into these specific roles, then you can see a link there which says read detailed Q&A for career advice in these specific areas. So what we've done is over the past couple of weeks, we have had specific industry specific sessions which have dealt with the roles, the companies. They've brought in people who work in these companies to speak to people, to speak to mentees. So I'll be sharing this presentation later on in the night today. You can just go through it and you can read through what they have to say there. You can understand these specific rules better. You can understand these specific companies and industries better. So if you are looking at a specific role like this, do look at that when you can. Let's look at consulting now. So consulting is also one of the most sought after areas in consult in a B school. So what do consulting firms do? Consulting firms basically solve strategic and generally broad problems for their clients. So let me take an example. Let's say I'm a soap company which operates primarily in India, and I'm trying to expand my company, and I think that maybe Nepal and Bangladesh might be good target segments. How do I really evaluate that discussion? How do I know if regulation allows it, if law allows that, what the competition is, what the pricing would be, how can I actually get my goods there, what the taxation would be? So number of issues to be solved there, which I don't have visibility to as a CEO, and which I don't probably even have the time to do the actual groundwork and figure out those solutions. So what a consulting firm will do is they'll bring in a set of people who will come and advise you. Now, who are these people? There'll be a bunch of people. There'll be people at the junior level who will talk to people across your company from the junior to senior level, get information, try to understand how you do things, how your organization is set up, what the internal constraints and functioning is. They will have people probably who have worked in soap industries across the world otherwise, who have consulted with them and who understand how that industry works. They might have people who are experts in the countries you're looking to get into. So basically what a consulting firm is doing is it's getting people who can do the raw grunt work, the Excel work, the calculations, and they're getting experts from across the world who have dealt with that and getting their advice to you. At the end of the day, they'll come up with a very specific solution saying this is what your problem is, this is the analysis we have done, and this is the recommendation that we have. So that is basically what a consulting firm does. There are a couple of types of consulting firms. You have pure strategy, which is like the McKinsey, BCG, Bain, Itikarni, which are pure strategic advisory kind of firms. Then you have industry focus, which are firms like Oliver Wyman, which deals with financial services. You have technology consulting like Accenture, and you have audit firms like PwC, KPMG, etc. Expectations. So it's a very broad area. You will be dealing with, say, probably automobile industry in 1 month. 3 months down the line, you might be dealing with petrochemicals, right? So you need to be able to adapt very quickly. You need to be able to change your understanding and move on very quickly, which means you need a basic awareness of things. Tomorrow, if you're put in front of a client of for an entirely new industry, you need to have something to say there. You need to broadly know how things work and what industries look like. So that general awareness is important. Having a broad understanding of every industry is important. If I give you, say, the airline industry, you should be able to come up with who the main competitors are, who the main cost drivers are, those kinds of things. Second is you need strong problem solving skills, which basically translates into being given a very vague problem and being able to break it down structurally and coming up with a good specific solution to it. So that's what consultants do, and that's what they will expect of you in an interview. The third is the ability to really network and build connections. At the end of the day, consulting is a people's business. It's about connecting with people, it's about getting information out of them, it's about convincing them to do things in certain ways. So, networking is a really, really important skill as far as consulting goes. From an interview point of view, there are two things. First is that it's largely consulting case based, which means they will give you a sample case and they will ask you to solve it then and there. It might be the a case like which I just gave you right now. Okay, you're a company which manufactures soap based in India. Do you want to expand into Bangladesh or Nepal? Now, what they're testing you is not for the solution that you get, but for the way you Solve it. How do you break down the problem? What are the questions that you ask? What is the information that you seek? And how do you proceed towards a specific solution? How do you eliminate options and come up with a very specific answer, a specific recommendation to the problem? That is one thing. The second is a basic knowledge of industries and basic economics of how they work. So, like I said, if you're talking about the airline industry, you should be able to have an opinion on, say, what the impact of fuel prices on these industries, or who are the main competitors, what are the main costs for them, what are the main revenues for them. So that is something which you will broadly need to understand. From a preparation point of view, generally the best way to deal with consulting preparation is to form groups of your own, like 5 or 6 people, come together often, meet together often, and practice cases with each other. So pick up a case book which you can find easily on the internet. Read out a case with your partner and have them solve it there then and there. and then probably invert your roles. That's one thing you can do. The second is that prepare for specific industries. So pick up a list of say 10, 12 major industries that you think are important, divide them among yourselves, do your homework, understand how those industries work, the main competitors, the main companies, their revenue drivers, their cost drivers, the concerns, any new regulation, those kinds of things, and use those cheat sheets in your as preparation for your interviews. That's one very good and effective way to look at preparing for consulting case interviews. A couple of myths here. People assume that only specific backgrounds and skills get into consulting, or that you need a number of specific spikes to get into consulting. That's not really the case. It's a very broad definition there. So be open. If you think that you might be good for consulting, you should go for it. Operations. So operations is that role which deals with logistics, which deal with scheduling, warehousing, procurement. That part of the business is what you do in an operations role. It's there across a variety of industries. It could be manufacturing, it could be service-based industries, it could be transportation, product companies, FMCGs. It's a very big variety of industries that you will find operations roles in. Now, operations, again, one of the more technical areas. It requires you to have an understanding of the concepts, the theory, the equations. So that is important. Do focus on those courses if you want to get into operations. It's good to know the best practices in industries. So, for example, a lot of Japanese firms are famous for their assembly lines, for the way they were able to identify issues, they're able to fix them quickly, they're able to move assembly lines at a much better pace and a higher efficiency than most other firms. So, understanding those trivia, understanding those concepts about how the best practices are being done, how the best firms in specific industries are doing things, is something that will really help you in interviews, and is something which might be expected of you in interviews. So that's what I said. The genuine interest in operations and trivia is important here, and HR questions are generally a part of operations interviews. The normal selection process. So you have a GDs typically, then you have interviews. Interviews would consist of normal caselet kind of questions. So they might give you a case about a specific assembly line, and then they might ask you, okay, what's the efficiency? How would you improve it? What are the constraints? Those kinds of things. Or they might ask you they might ask you a general HR kind of questions. So myths here, you do not need to know all the questions, all the theories. What they're trying to understand is if you know the concepts broadly, if you have an understanding of how they work and how to think about them. So if you have done your homework well, if you've read up on the equations and the theories well, you should be able to answer these kinds of questions. On the ground knowledge is necessary. Knowing, having an opinion on what's actually happening in the industry, in the world. So, for example, e-commerce companies in India, what is the biggest constraint from a logistics point of view? How do they do things? Do they have warehouses? How do they decide the number of warehouses? Having an opinion on those kinds of real life issues, on the ground practicalities of business, especially in India, will be really helpful from an operations point of view. Do not think that because there are already best practices established across industries, across companies, then you don't have much of a role. These are very generic, very broad rules, and you will always have a lot of things to do in operations. E-commerce, one of the most popular sectors in the last couple of years, and e-commerce is again a very broad role. Like finance, it encompasses a lot of different areas which are very different among themselves. So you could have business development, you could have product management, category management, finance, analytics, all these kinds of roles in the same company, and probably even coming to hire on your campus on the same day. If you want more insight into these specific roles, I think you should just see the Q&A for careers in e-commerce link at the bottom, where we had people from Amazon, Flipkart, and Snapdeal talk about their specific roles, their specific companies and career paths there. So if you're interested, do look at that link later on when we send across our presentation. From an expectations point of view, so a lot of e-commerce is ultimately driven by cost economics, economies of scale, and how you are able to create a product which scales up to become profitable. So understanding the basic economics is important from a e-commerce standpoint. Then it boils down to what specific role you're getting into. If you're going into a marketing role, then you need to know the e-commerce specifics of marketing, which could be the click rate, which could be search engine optimization, acquisition, social media, those kinds of things. If you're going to supply chain, it's more about warehousing, delivery time, service rate, those kinds of things. Interview process, you normally have a GD, you could have an HR round, and you generally have a couple of rounds of interviews specific to the role you have applied. So like I mentioned, roles are very different between themselves. So know what kind of role you're getting into and prepare accordingly. So a couple of myths. There have been cases in the last couple of years wherein e-commerce firms have come on campus, hired and not respected those offers. Those things happen. E-commerce has been a slightly volatile in that sense in the last couple of years. But at this point of your career, take a broader perspective. Understand at the end of the day, what e-commerce is doing is connecting buyers and sellers. In a big, diverse market like India, there's really a strong need for that. There's really a strong need for strong supply chains, for a strong ability to connect buyers and sellers. So if you believe in that idea, then e-commerce is here to stay for a very long time to come. And then you should look for a career in that. Do not get discouraged by the incidents that happen wherein firms don't recognize offers and those kinds of things. Those things do happen in industry, but you need to deal with them. Take a broader perspective about how things look for you and for the firm you want to get into, and decide accordingly. There's a perception that supply chain is done by engineers and MBAs should be on the more on the business side. That's not true, because supply chain links very strongly with business. It's about understanding the incentives of people, of stakeholders across the supply chain. It's about understanding what the bottlenecks are, what the broader implications of business are. So there are a lot of business graduates who work in supply chain. It's a lot of on the ground work. It's a lot of actually meeting people, meeting distributors, meeting salespeople. It's on the ground work. It is not purely a desk job. So look at it that way. Like I said, there is a level of economics involved. You need to understand how the finance works, because that is what is ultimately driving an e-commerce company. So that understanding and awareness is normally required. So that's where we end the formal presentation. A couple of things. The Facebook page is a host to a couple of very good articles. You can read up on these notes. For example, the screenshot you have here is a session we had on e-commerce. So we had people from Amazon, Flipkart, Snapdeal who spoke about their roles, their companies, their the kind of opportunities available there. So just look at that, and you have these write-ups for finance, for consulting, for marketing. So we have had people from Boston Consulting Group. We've had people from Philips, firms like UBS, Nomura, Ernst and Young to come and speak to you people on these conversations there. The second thing is you can look at our MentorPad blog. So we are basically a curated set of mentors who have been chosen specifically for what they have achieved and what they have done. So if you go on this blog, you will see experiences from a variety of people across industries. Like I said, there's a surgeon there. We have people from B schools. We have people who are at Harvard, Columbia, etc. Speak about the specific experiences and the specific advice. So do go through that if you have the time. Let's look at questions now. I'll start with questions from people who have asked us on the forms there in just 1 minute. We have a question from Abhishek Yadav on the IT techno management kind of roles. Okay, that's a good question. So I gave you a hint there if you noticed about IT consulting kind of roles. So that is one thing. So in a firm like Accenture, as an MBA graduate, what you're dealing with is you're dealing with broadly what you probably call IT management, which is essentially being the interface of businesses and the IT product that you have. So IT management tools could probably be IT consulting, or they could be pure roles in the industry. For example, firms like Wipro, firms like Infosys, TCS tend to have leadership programs which deal with the broader business aspect of IT management. So these roles are typically about finding customers, understanding what their needs are, understanding what your firm's products are, what your products technical specifications and constraints and benefits are, and finding that connection between the end user, the business, as well as what you can offer as a product. So those are what tech management firms really are. Try to get into either of these. You could go into a consulting part, which will give you more exposure to different kinds of industries, their requirements, and how they do things. Or you could go into the industry role wherein you're dealing with a specific company, dealing with a specific range of products, but across a wider set of clients. So those are the two broad options that you have. A question by Nitish: how to handle HR questions well. I think we focused on that already in the presentation. Uh, how do we explain a non-academic gap for exam preparation and interviews? Well, like I said, this is something which you can answer very tactfully if you're honest and if you give anecdotes about that. So a non-academic gap for exam preparation. So probably you were sick, or probably you just need more time for yourself. You wanted to do something else, and why you took this gap. Or maybe you're just preparing for it. Maybe you just required more time to prepare for an exam, and that's your entire reason. So you should be honest about it. Do not try to get away with it, because these people have been in your place. They have had friends like you. They have had people who have been in similar places. So be honest first of all. Tell them what the reason is. They will appreciate that, and then say how that might have changed you. You took a break for 1 year. Did you just study there? Did you have time to reflect on yourself? Are you taking a better decision because of that today? So need to be a bit creative. Be honest. Tell them exactly what the circumstances are, how you took that decision, and how you would do things today. Maybe you will still stand by the decision. Maybe you took a year of simply to prepare for CAT. Did that doesn't work out for you? What's your opinion about that? So be frank. Tell them how that decision worked out for you, how things could have been better, how things could have gone worse if you hadn't taken that decision, and that's how you should go about it. Convert it into a discussion about your decision making, how you look at difficult questions in your life, and then you should be fine in these kinds of questions. But of course, there's no easy way. You need to be honest. You need to be a bit introspective. That's really the only way you can get through these kinds of questions. A couple of questions by Bishal. How is the field of advertising? So the field of advertising is strongly related to marketing. I think from an MBA point of view, you would typically end up in more of a marketing role, and then probably focus on the advertising aspect of it. So if you want to get into advertisements, then probably focus more on the sales and marketing interviews at the moment. There are not many firms which hire directly for advertisements. It's more of a sub branch. It's more of something which you start specializing in once you've been there for some time. So that's about it. Focus on sales marketing, and then look at if you can start moving towards a focus on advertisements if you want to. You asked for the pathway for career in marketing. I think I've spoken about that already. Which subjects other than marketing are helpful in the long run of a marketing career? So in the long run, in any business career, you need to have a broad understanding of really all the subjects, right? That's why they're taught. When you start off in a career right after an MBA, you will be focused on the very specifics of what you're doing. You'll be focused on, say, just the marketing part of it. You will be going around talking to people, talking to distributors, talking to warehouses, getting stuff done at the bottom of the pyramid. But as you grow in your career, you will be dealing with you will probably be an interviewer, you will be probably dealing with recruitment, you will be dealing with HR issues, you will be dealing with the finances of that product, the the operational part of that product, the broader strategic issues of that product. So as you grow senior, everything starts to converge, everything starts to become important. So having a good understanding of everything will really help you towards as you move ahead in your career. But that's not something they really expect you to have at this point in time. From an internship point of view, from a final placements point of view, focus on that specific role, that specific industry. That should be enough for you at the moment. If I like field work, what is the best option in marketing other than sales? So field work, if you really like, then probably you should try roles in operations. You could try roles in supply chain. Now, note that I'm talking about roles and not industries here, because these roles typically will be there across industries and will give you exposure across industries. So you could go into a firm like, say, Amazon or Flipkart, working in the supply chain or working in operations, or you could go into a conglomerate like Tata, and you will find this kind of hands-on, on-the-ground experience. Especially a role like a role like operations will, in an FMCG firm or an e-commerce firm, will require you to actually lead a set of people, 15, 20, 30 people, very early in your career. And that's a very good leadership experience that you will get in these kinds of firms. There's a question on analytics profiles and chemical industry. Okay, so chemical industry is a bit very specific. Generally, I don't expect a pure chemical services firm to come to campus to hire. There might be specific rules, but in general, what you will do in the more technical industries is purely be the interface between the product or the service that the company has with the external world, which means that you will be in a more of a sales or marketing kind of role, or probably a business development kind of role where you are dealing with M&A for the company or broader business management. That is what you will generally end up doing. But would you really prepare specifically for a chemicals company, or would you expect a lot of chemicals companies to come hire from a B school? I really don't think so. As far as analytics goes, yes, it's a booming field. It's a more of a technical area. What you need to look at here is that it's not a specific industry on its own. There are companies which deal with analytics, but the most application and the most jobs are in industry. So, for example, e-commerce, given the amount of data that they have, is really investing in analytics, is really investing in big data. So those are the areas that you can go into as a B school graduate, wherein your role is to have an understanding of how the analytics is being run, what are the numbers being crunched out there, and then taking that and making business decisions based on it. So that is normally what you would do as a B school graduate. Your role is more towards the application of the analysis that you have, of the numbers that you're able to run, the algorithms that you have, and seeing how they apply. So again, I don't think a lot of pure analytics companies come on campus. The roles are more in terms of specific industries. For example, consulting will have a component of analytics. E-commerce might have specific analytics roles for you. So if you want to go, probably go into these kinds of industries to be in analytics. A question by Ashish on digital marketing opportunities. I would say you first focus largely on general sales and marketing, understand those concepts, understand those frameworks, those theories, how that works. Digital marketing is a smaller subset of that. So build your broader understanding first and foremost, and then you can focus on digital marketing, etc. um, uh, like the earlier roles I said, I don't think firms really specifically hire for digital marketing at the moment. They might hire you for sales and marketing in general, and then there might be a component of digital marketing to it. For example, most e-commerce firms have hire for marketing, and they will have strong digital marketing teams. So that's something which you could break into that way. A question by Jyoti. How do I convince recruiters about a gap in career due to bad health? So again, like I said, be honest here, be straightforward here. They will appreciate that, and talk. them through the circumstances, to give them the exact scenario of what happened, what were the conditions you were in, what were the steps you took, and how you recovered from it. Right? So if you had bad health or something, then you could really tell it this way, that okay, things weren't going well for me, I was sick for this much time, but then I was able to pick myself up. This is how I recovered. This is how I took things back in my hand. And I might have wasted 8 9 months, I might have wasted one whole year, but in that time I learned to persevere, I learned to work against my will and get really something done. So be honest, be straightforward, and tell them what you learned from the entire experience. And be frank, maybe it wasn't a good decision on your part, maybe it was a good decision on your part, but be reflective. Tell them what you think about it now, and tell them how you would have done things differently now. That is important from a B school point of view, because they want to look at people who are self-reflective, who can criticize their own selves, and who can take better decisions based on what mistakes they have done in the past, or which might not have gone well in the past. But do not try to cover it up, do not try to make lame excuses. Be honest, be straightforward, and I'm sure they'll understand where you're coming from. There's a question about convincing recruiters about an MBA after 7 years of graduation. Now, in foreign B schools, 7 years is still okay. In Indian B schools, yes, it's typically not that traditional. Uh, Talk to them about the circumstances. Explain to them what was your thought process, what were your conditions, what led you to not doing an MBA earlier on, and what led you to doing it now. And you might have valid reasons there. Maybe you were in a good career path already for the first couple of years. Maybe you had family constraints. Maybe you had monetary constraints. It could be anything. So be straightforward with them. Explain to them what your circumstances were, why you did not think of doing an MBA earlier on, uh, how things changed, and how you decided to do an MBA right now. And then go to more specific things. Tell them how you are different from the rest of the people. Tell them how you bring a set of skills which other people don't have, but which you bring to the table. Right? So you are unique there in that sense. Make an advantage of yours. Tell them that okay, I believe this is like a role which will benefit from experience, which will benefit from industry connections, and that is what I bring to the table. So it's about how you present your story about your larger work experience than usual. It could be seen as a good thing or a bad thing purely based on how you present it. So be a bit smart about that, and you'll do a good job there. A question by Akansha on the job prospects for a fresher in marketing and operations. So, firstly, the thing to understand is that from an India B school hiring point of view, a lot of firms come from the perspective that they're hiring freshers, or they're hiring people with not a lot of work experience. So I don't think you should be concerned about being a fresher, because that's more or less where the expectation is. It really won't hurt you from that angle. From a preparation angle, if you feel that you don't have enough of your on your CV because you're a fresher, there are a couple of things you can do. You can try doing projects with professors, or doing specific courses which can then show up on your CV, which will probably help bring out the right decision when it can. So that's one thing. The second is you can participate in competitions, in events at, let's say, your own IIM or other campuses, that will help present you as someone who's interested in that area, and give you some exposure there. Do not think that being a fresher has any kind of disadvantage in these areas. That's just not the case. A question by Chatley. What would a recruiter expect from a fresher while offering a marketing profile? It doesn't really change whether you're a fresher or whether you have 1 2 3 years of experience. Most marketing recruiters tend to have a specific program which they'll take you through, which will be designed to blend you as a marketing person in the next 1 2 3 years. They will take you through sales stints, through marketing stints, in different locations, in different verticals, and they will take responsibility of grooming you. So do not really think that being a fresher would be a different kind of role or different kind of set of constraints from being someone who has worked in the industry for 2 3 years. A question by Abhishek: books to follow to become a hedge fund manager. A very interesting question. So hedge funds are essentially funds which, like I said, deal with the higher level of risk and a higher level of capital. What it means is that they're more riskier firms. They are firms which will take hiring and firing decisions very quickly, which means that they are very stringent on who they hire, and they don't really invest in grooming talent. They don't really invest in hiring junior people who they will then coach and grow over the next couple of years. So as far as hedge funds go, it's very rare for people to join right at after B school. There are cases, but that's very rare, and that's not what the traditional norm is. If you're going to go work for a hedge fund, the normal way, the traditional way, and the easiest way is to work for an investment bank in a regular sales and trading role, a bank like Goldman or JP or UBS, something like that. Understand the business well, understand the integrities, understand how the markets work, get some practical experience in trading, in managing risk, in taking positions. And that is when you can think about moving to a hedge fund kind of position. So it's probably at least a 4 or 5 year career in a regular trading role in an investment bank before you can move to a hedge fund. So there's no specific books. You need to prepare if you really want to go into a hedge fund in the long run. If you're looking at a 8-10 year time horizon, work towards getting into a proper finance, sales or trading kind of role, and then you can look towards going into a hedge fund. A question by Mohit. Generally, companies hire people with relevant work experience for an operations role. Having worked 3 years as a business analyst, how do I improve my chances of getting there? Okay, so it's true that sometimes having that kind of relevant experience will be helpful. For example, if you've worked in, say, a firm like Tata or something on the assembly line, then you have hands down on the ground work experience in operations, and that will be helpful to you if you pursue a career there. But again, it does not mean that you can't really break into that industry. Like I said, you can do things, put things on your CV which show that you have an interest in operations, take part in competitions, do courses, do projects, do things which give you visibility trying to get into. If nothing else, if you don't have courses yet on specific areas that you want to do, try doing courses online, try doing courses on Coursera, do activities, take up projects, invest in things which will teach you about operations, and which will also put that on your CV so that you have a credible case to build when you're sitting in an interview and you're trying to explain why you want to move from being a business analyst to an operations manager. There's a question by Aityan. Is it better to join HR at the start of career or after working in a domain for a couple of years? So my personal opinion would be that you work in a specific domain for a couple of years and then try to move into an HR role. Because if you look at it, HR is a supportive role. It's an ancillary function. It's not a revenue generating function. It's not a key component of business. It's what supports business. At the end of the day, if you're in a support role, if you're in HR, which is helping the business grow, helping managing the human capital of a firm, you need to have a good understanding of how it works, how the people at the front are thinking, how does the sales guy think, how does the finance guy think, what are their constraints, what are the skills they need, how do they think. That aspect is important, that understanding, that intuition is important. So my personal recommendation would be that if you have a chance, go for a specific domain like say marketing, sales, consulting, whatever. And then if you want, then try and move on to a HR role. That would give you a broader and a better perspective of how things work and help you be a better person in HR in general. So that's all the questions that I have from the form. Let me look at the questions that we have from the chat today. Okay, a question by Nikit Gambali on the roles of digital marketing, please. So digital marketing is essentially it's not a very difficult concept. It's simply using the internet, using social media to get your products across, to get your services across. Now it's a big area, especially in terms of analytics, because this is an area of marketing where data collection is very easy compared to other channels of marketing. So the big focus on analytics, the big focus on big data, so called, and the application to taking decisions on marketing. So what you would do in a typical marketing role is that you would be launching, say, you're working on a campaign to target a specific customer segment. Now, how does that targeting and segmentation and product work from an E point of view? How do you decide what are the right E channels to get that communication across? Do you do it via which kind of media do you use? Do you use social media? Do you use probably videos? Do you use audio? Do you use radio? So that is the kind of discussion that you'll be having. Those are the kind of decisions that you'll be taking from a digital marketing point of view. A question by Gaurav Pal, the roles offered by IT companies. I think I broadly answered it. So if you're looking at a firm like Infosys or Wipro or those kinds of firms, what you are dealing with is helping being the interface between the products that the company has with what the clients need. So understanding what the clients needs are, what the existing products are, how your product can be a better alternative, what will be the costing, what will be the pricing, understanding what the number of man hours required to implement a solution is. So it helps to have a basic understanding of IT, but what you're doing fundamentally as a B school graduate in an IT company is being the sales interface between the products that you have as a firm and the clients that you have. A question by Ankit Chaudhary about long-term goals should be related to the position company where we want to reach. I think you can take a broader perspective as far as long-term goals are concerned. You should not really be saying that, okay, I want to be a VP in the company 10 years down the line. That's a very narrow perspective. Take a broader perspective because that's more practical. You cannot really predict your career path for the next couple of years, but be a bit sensible about it. So let's say you work in marketing, you're in a marketing interview. Your goal could probably be that you want to start leading marketing in a specific region. You want to be a marketing leader in Southeast Asia. Why? Because you feel that the region has the potential to grow the most, offers a very different kind of perspective, different kind of business environment between the countries. Vietnam is very different from Philippines, is different from China, different from India. So you can say that in the long run, you want to build a global career, you want to look at different kinds of businesses, and you want to be in a position of influence. At the end of the day, you want to be in a position where you can actually change decisions and take the broader decisions for the firm. So be broad in what you say, link it to leadership, link it to change management, link it to a broader aspiration about leading a business, because that's where they want to see you. They want to see you as a CEO or a CMO in the next couple of years. Try to align it with that. I would not say that you focus on that specific company. That'll sound a bit odd. Saying that you want to be a VP in that specific company only in the next 10 years is a bit odd. So be a bit broad and talk about broader objectives, which could be, like I said, taking a broad leadership position, getting that global exposure, managing a different set of diverse verticals under you. Those could be your broader, longer term objectives. Question by Abhishek, discuss a bit more on the role of hedge funds and how to prepare for this role. I think I covered that. Uh, but if you want a bit more on that, you can just drop us a message on Facebook and I can look at that more specifically if you want very specific advice on getting into hedge funds. A question by Chintan: is prior work experience really important for a consultant role? No, not at all. I know a lot of colleagues, a lot of friends of mine who were straight graduates and who got into consulting roles. You do not need work experience before that. Do IT roles expect from us to be good with coding skills? Not really. It is good to have a basic understanding of what the products are, how the IT part of it works. But does it mean that you need to have good coding skills? Not really. That's not what you need. You need to understand what the product is, what the client's requirements are, and how they look at things, and just be the person who can match those paths. I guess I've answered all the questions that we had that I can see right now. If you have any more questions, drop us a line on mail, drop us a line on Facebook, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible within 24 hours. Quick introduction. My name is Ruchir Gupta. I'm an IT Bombay 2012 and IIMA 2015 graduate. I work with Nomura in Singapore. I work in a structured trading role. So that's about it from us today. Wish you all the best for your interviews, for your preparation. Any questions that you have, just drop us a line on Facebook and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. If you like our Facebook page, then you'll be able to follow what we are doing. We come up with videos once in a while which explain concepts. We come up with these articles. We come up with online conversations called Mentor Circles that I introduced to you a couple of minutes back. Subscribe to our YouTube page because we will be having a lot of good content coming here as well. So thanks a lot. Stay in touch, and any more questions, please let us know on Facebook and we'll be happy to get back. Thanks a lot, guys.